Welcome back. Another escalation from House Democrats on the subject of impeachment today. The House Judiciary Committee laying out the parameters for what it calls, quote, an ongoing impeachment investigation of President Trump. A vote is expected Thursday on those parameters, the details of which are less important than what they signify. The first effort that acknowledges in earnest that the Judiciary Committee is considering impeachment. With me now is a member of that committee, the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Steve Cohen from Tennessee. Congressman, thank you for joining us. I want to get to all of this. I do want to just start on what we were talking about in the last segment. I think you're familiar and up to date on this. OK, clearly you're indicating you are. New reporting from the New York Times that last Friday, the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, whose department, of course, has jurisdiction over NOAA, called the agency's acting administrator and said that if the Birmingham office tweet was not contradicted publicly, there would be firings. What's your reaction to that?
It's just more insanity. You know, the Sharpie thing is amazing, Steve. When they asked him at his press conference about who did it, and he gave the same look that he had when he was on the airplane and said he didn't know anything about paying off Stormy Daniels, anything about checks. It was that same doe in the headlights look of, oh, I have no idea who did it. He never did say, but I'm going to find out who did it. He's done about as much to find out who did that Sharpie thing as O.J. Simpson's done to find out the murderers.
Let me turn to the subject here of impeachment. We said up there in the introduction, your committee is voting this week on, is this an impeachment inquiry that you're formalizing? What exactly will this week's vote do?
It will formalize having an impeachment inquiry. We've had hearings that have been, in essence, part of the background on this. We've had my subcommittee, which is Constitution, Civil Liberties, and Civil Rights. We've had hearings on pardon power and whether the limits of the pardon power, and that's part of what we'll be looking at, and that'll be incorporated in any impeachment vote we might take. But this is formalizing it. It's giving us, making it clear to the courts that we are in an impeachment inquiry and that the court should honor and support our efforts to get testimony and documents that the administration has obstructed the Congress from getting, and they should comply and work with us. And we're setting up the same standards as were in the Clinton impeachment and the Nixon impeachment, and that is that counsel have 30 minutes on each side to question after members have done questioning. That sequential follow-up questioning is so important. And that we also give the president due process, and then we have certain parameters when we'll go in camera for executive session on certain grand jury testimony that hopefully the courts will give us, because it's necessary to conduct this hearing for the defense of the due process, defense really of the rule of law and democracy, which is at stake. Now,
at the end of this process you're outlining, there will be an up-down vote on an article of impeachment. Is that where this is heading?
There will be a decision at some point on whether there will be an up-down vote. There could be the decision made by leadership that there shouldn't even be a vote. The key is, will the public, after they hear the information and see it put before their eyes, they haven't read the Mueller report. Some of them listened to Mueller testify about the 10 possible obstruction of justice cases, 5 of which seem more secure and complete than the other 5, but there's potentially anywhere, definitely 5, possibly 10, and the fact that they worked with the Russians and over 150 times, I think it was, to try to get information, and they sought information and welcomed information from the Russians interfering in our elections, which they were doing as Mr. Mueller spoke and as they're doing now. And that information's there. It'll come out in testimony from hopefully from Lewandowski, from Dearborn, hopefully McGahn. They'll tell the truth, and if they tell what they said to Mueller, the public will be convinced, and should be, except for those who have just overdosed on the Kool-Aid, that this president has committed several cases of obstruction of justice. When we have our emoluments hearings that we'll have later in September in my subcommittee for what he's done, not only just trying to get business for the Doral Country Club and what he does with his golf courses, but what he does every day at the Trump Hotel, what he does every day at Trump Tower and at other Trump properties, taking monies from Saudis, taking money from Chinese, taking money from all kind of foreign folks and welcoming it. These are violations to the Constitution. They are emoluments clause violations that were tied up with impeachment when the Founding Fathers discussed it. When this news comes out and other information, whether it's Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal about the payoffs to get the presidency, you know, Michael Cohen's in jail for 3 years. Why is he in jail? Because he did what President Trump told him to do and what President Trump paid for. President Trump is individual one. Every single day, we've got a president who would be in jail with Michael Cohen for a felony in getting the office of President of the United States, and he is in office, and the only way he'll avoid prosecution is if he gets reelected.
You said there may be a decision by leadership not to have a vote. Are you talking about the leadership of this committee, or are you talking about Democratic leadership? Because there's one read on what your committee's doing. Nancy Pelosi is publicly non-committal on impeachment. There's reporting that privately she's told Democrats, the New York Times reported privately she's told Democrats the public isn't there yet, and that your committee is essentially trying to force her hand and force Democrats' hand on this.
Well, we're trying to produce the evidence that is, I think, clear. There have been multiple violations that would warrant impeachment. And that if we do such and the public comes up like they did in Nixon, it was 17% when they started their hearings, over 60% when the hearings were concluded. Is there a smoking gun? I think there's an arsenal, a garrison. But yes, if we bring the public opinion up greater, I think the leadership will be for us having a vote and maybe even taking action. But it depends on what we adduce through these hearings and what the public's response is. But I can't speak for Leader Pelosi. All I know is where I think we're going, and I think if the proof's out there that we'll be in a good spot in December, and the public will find that they've been taken for a ride.
And just quickly, I just heard you say by December. There's probably about 40 days. I think that's the reporting that's out there. There's about 40 days of session days left before the end of the year. Do you have to get those? You're saying you got to turn public opinion around in this. Is that the deadline, basically, end of this year?
Probably, give or take. I'm not sure if there's a certain deadline, but it could be give or take. I would like to think we could go until January 20 of 2020 at least, the third anniversary of the horror of this man becoming president.
All right, Congressman Steve Cohen, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Thank you for taking a few minutes.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.